Welcome back, everyone. I will go ahead and pass the floor over to Sean so he can introduce Rachel.
Thank you, Naveen. And Naveen, just double checking, you'll be doing the question, you'll be facilitating the questions at the end of this session. Will be Jennifer.
I believe Jennifer is doing that as
Jennifer's
well.
got it again. Okay, great. Thank you. The first thing I want to do is I don't just again underline how valuable and rich this collaboration with the University of St. Thomas has been for me personally, and for the Jung Center. And if those of you who are here today are not aware of the clinical mental health counseling program at the University of St. Thomas, I really do encourage you to look at it. I know that there are professionals on the phone. It's a really wonderfully rich training program. It has a strong social justice component, which is really compelling and I think unique among the counseling training offerings in this region. And I think so highly of the faculty there. So I just want to express my gratitude to my colleagues, and not just for this, but for what you do in the community every day. And I also really want to thank Andrea for her beautiful presentation, and to note that this is being recorded. And so if you had moments where you wanted, I know we were going back and forth between slides, to make sure that we could grab all the information, that this will be made available again afterwards. And it might be a resource that you would be interested in sharing with others. One of the one of the aspects of Andrea's presentation that was really compelling to me is that call for noting the lack of voices from within the community of the neurodiverse, speaking about their experiences. The resources, as Andrea mentioned, are resources by ministry teams and others who are neurotypical, looking at the population as opposed to speaking from within lived experience. And it's a real gift that we do get to share with you this afternoon some of those voices. And I'm going to introduce to you Dr. Rachel Weiner, who is just a really respected and treasured colleague of mine, and on faculty at the Jung Center, has taught for the Jung Center, and she is let me tell you just a little bit about her. She is a licensed clinical psychologist. She got her bachelor's degree at Columbia University and then got her PhD in child clinical psychology from St. John's University. And she relocated to Houston from New York in 2001 and completed her training at Baylor College of Medicine. She's been affiliated with Rice University and has been teaching there from time to time as adjunct faculty. She also teaches sometimes with Baylor College of Medicine. She has a real interest in the value of the arts as a way of as a span. I'll get her to speak to this a little bit more, but as a way in which sort of a means in which to encounter and create community. And she's taken, she works with a neurodiverse population in these groups that she has created. She's actually taken people to taken the groups to New York City, and she might tell us a little bit about that as well. And she's many of the people that she works with are neurodiverse, and she has invited two people to join us. I think two are with us today, and I'll get Rachel to introduce them to you. She's also in the midst of writing a book about this work and how to do this really innovative work with the arts. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel. Thank you so much. Welcome. We'll get you to unmute yourself, I think. We can't hear you.
I was going to say, I want to invite you to introduce me wherever I go, because I think you do it better than I do myself. But I'm very interested in affinity groups. I think this is the word. I've been searching for words, and as words are very important, and I certainly, one of the many things that resonated with me from Dr. Messinio's presentation was the firsthand testimony and your emphasis on that. And so when I was invited to join this presentation, this congregation, really, I wanted to invite two people who I felt were very thoughtful and representative, and could do a lot more thoughtful work in describing their own experience from the first person with religion and spirituality. And I wanted to introduce both David Cates and John Ryan Benson to join us today, because they are two very thoughtful people, and not because they are or are especially part of a faithful community. They have a lot to say on about their own experience and their own sense of connection or not with religion and spirituality over the years. And so I thought it was wonderful that you allowed me to invite them today. I would love to be able to give that sort of introduction that Dr. Fitzpatrick gave me. But I'm really interested in hearing, I wonder if we could hear from David first. David, if you could introduce yourself and talk about what you would like the audience to know about you. And then John Ryan, if you would share a little bit about yourself with the audience.
Hello, everybody. My name's David Cates. For things that are important to the discussion at hand, I do fall under the categorization of an autism spectrum disorder. I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome almost 20 years ago. And ethnically and by upbringing, I am Reform Jewish. And while I've never considered myself a particularly religious person per se, I would say that being Jewish is an important part of my identity, and not just from the ethnic standpoint.
I wonder if we could get into that a little bit in the discussion. I wanted you to maybe tell the audience a little bit about what you're doing and your involvement, and then we could turn it over to John Ryan just for a brief introduction, and then get into the nitty-gritty, if you don't mind.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, could you say that again?
To ask if you could introduce yourself in terms of what you're doing, and then we can talk a little bit about religion and spirituality. I want to do a brief introduction of you, and then of Ryan.
Okay. Really, I think I've hit on some of the more important aspects. For my day-to-day life, I'm currently working on being a professional actor. I'm currently affiliated with the Alliance Theater, which is a group here in Houston. I was recently in a production of ours of the play The Boys Next Door. And honestly, I think other aspects will probably come out as we talk, but I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to John Ryan.
Thank you, David. John Ryan?
Well, I'm John Ryan Benson. You want to know what I'm doing right now? I'm working on or at least waiting upon an assignment by both. I work for Stages of Repertory Theater as an administrative coordinator. I used to go into acting, but apparently I'm not sure if that basically hampers it a bit or gotten a little rusty. So, and currently I'm working as an administrative coordinator, trying to build try to either work at a database or some little project that both Josh and Lisa are trying to come up with. It's I mean, it's
May I jump in here for a minute? And because
Sure.
I don't know that everyone knows who Josh and Lisa are, but sounds to me like, and I don't want to take your words from you, it sounds when I talk to the people at Stages like you do a lot of different things. You're involved in all aspects of production, and it's such a small company that they give you a lot of different things to do. Is that fair to say?
Well, I don't know the right words of how to introduce myself. What I'm doing right now, or what I've done in the past, that sort of thing.
Well, so I wanted to talk a little bit about, or I wanted to give you both the opportunity to talk about the topic that I had discussed with you briefly, about how you identify yourselves. I think that we have a lot to learn from you about your experiences of religion and spirituality. Also, from the inside, from your particular perspectives. And I know it's a topic that we've discussed a lot over the years. And I wonder if, David, if you would like to begin the conversation a little bit about how you've started to talk about how you identify yourself, but I wonder about your personal experiences with religion and with spirituality, or if you even differentiate the two.
I think that's actually a good starting point. It can be really hard to define where religion and spirituality intersect and where they don't. And personally, I don't consider myself a particularly spiritual person. But there are aspects of my religious experience that definitely have resonated with me throughout my life. One of the biggest ones being that Judaism has a strong emphasis on moral conduct. And I think that's something that, for at least many people on the spectrum, definitely for me, is very appealing because it helps provide a good framework of rules to live by. And that could be something that the secular world is not very good at providing. See.
Can you say something, maybe if it occurs to you, it might not. Can you maybe give an example of a moral conduct, an example of moral conduct that you learned from either from a Jewish, I was going to say religious school or camp, that you think is specific to, or something that resonates with you more deeply and specifically?
Well, two come straight to mind. One is one that's very emphasized within Judaism, is the importance of generosity. And the other is of just care for your fellow person. Pardon me a second. Okay, sorry about that. And I think that, especially that second one, is a big one for me because it just resonates, the idea that every single person is someone to be valued.
And have you felt valued by the religious community?
Well, it's really hard to give any concrete examples, just because it's been so pervasive.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where it's just so important that you don't look for the specific examples, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting to consider. And Ryan, I'm wondering about your experience and with religion and spirituality. We can get more specific. Oh, I think we lost you. You might have turned off your camera. There you are. Wondering if you can share with us your experience of religion and spirituality, how you define yourself.
Well, I'm basically living in a very typical Presbyterian household. Our religion is basically somewhat set in stone. Nothing too gimmicky nor special. We used to go to church, but apparently some of us, mainly Dad, has been watching sermons at home on his iPad, and due to the epidemic, it's pretty unlikely to actually physically go to a church because of the academic. As for how I view spirituality, it's sometimes it feels like a rather mixed feeling. Sometimes it helps me get through day-to-day stuff, and other times they're just things that they're just parts of the Bible which you don't exactly want to hear. I mean, we're all like that sometimes, but this is just taking me to a whole new level, and for a while I've written some comparisons between this religion, Christianity, and other religions, two of which are Mormonism and Islam, which I don't think we'll ever get into, since some of you are probably asking, what's that got to do with Christianity? And
Oh, well, this is really meant to be the way that I saw it in inviting you. I really didn't have a preconceived idea of what you would be discussing. I know that you have written papers before, and that's part of your process in understanding religion academically, but also personally. So I thought that was something of value that you would share, that you might choose to share. So how does understanding other religious perspectives or other theologies bring you to an understanding of your own personal
well,
theology?
Well, in college, I looked at other Christian doctrines, and going to other churches to see what they're like, to see which is right for me. Since in Mitchell College, since the nearest Presbyterian church is far away, I decided to go to another church, which is partly Episcopalian type of thing. But deep down inside, I'm quite the Presbyterian myself, even though I'm not quite as good as a Presbyterian as others may believe. But due to my I don't know what to say. I even took religious classes in college years, and possibly my high school years to discover what other religions are there, like Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism.
That's a lot of study. And what I wonder, in light of Dr. Messinio's presentation, I'm so glad, by the way, that both of you were able to join for the whole conference today. I'm really glad that you got a chance to hear what she had to say in that beautiful presentation. I wanted to thank you for that. Did you have any thoughts about what a place there was for you in your respective traditions, how much a part of things you felt in church or at synagogue, or if there's more room for your voice or the voices of other people who are neurodiverse, differently abled? Did you feel a part of things, or do you feel a part of things?
I'd like to jump in on that one.
Go ahead.
So, for minor bit of background here, I and my family have long been affiliated with Temple Emmanuel, which is the largest one of the largest Reform Jewish congregations in the city. And that can be a very double-edged sword, I find, especially for someone like me on the spectrum, because when I was younger, of course, we would go to synagogue fairly frequently. I don't remember exactly. I'd say somewhere on the order of once a month plus the high holidays. And I often felt the sensation of being alone in the crowd, because there were a lot of people there and we were ostensibly doing the same thing, but I didn't really feel a strong connection. And I think part of that for me was a feeling of a disconnect between the ritual aspects of Judaism and the more day-to-day aspects. Like I said, what did resonate for me, even as a young person, was the moral code, and I couldn't see the connection between that and what we were doing in synagogue. So for me, being at synagogue was not particularly that great of an experience. Although I would say most weeks or most times I was there, the worst I could say about it was that I felt bored.
Mm-hmm. So I really love that Dr. Messinio talked about spectrum strengths with respect to the neurodiverse faithful. And I was thinking about you both in that, not just because you were there and we were going to be talking, but because this, it's very difficult sometimes for the assumption of neurotypicality within religious communities. This idea that there could be something done to accommodate you in religious or spiritual life, as opposed to something that you bring to the table. That was something that I very much appreciated, and I hope that each of you thinks about. Is there room for you in future in the organized religious experience or spiritual life in that way, in terms of what you uniquely have to offer? Do you have that awareness?
That's one that I've actually put a lot of thought into over even the last couple of months, I'd say, because it's a fairly complex question. Personally, I've had very little interest in participating in any kind of organized religion or organized service for, I'd say, a few years at least. But there is a caveat to that, and I'm actually going to sort of flashback, if you will, to much earlier in my life, there was always a portion of the service that I found did work for me. And it is customary within the Reformed Jewish service to have a certain part of the service set aside for a silent prayer, which and there's no set wording you're supposed to use, no particular things you're supposed to say or think. You can use it as sort of a silent meditation if you choose. And I found, even just having something like that in the service was really helpful, because it gave me the chance to get that connection. Even if I didn't feel connected to the people in the room, I could feel connected to the purpose of the service.
I very much appreciate how much that resonates with Dr. Messenia. With I don't know if you prefer to be called Andrea or Dr. Messenia, but so appreciated your contribution because of that. That being one of the real distinct strengths. What you said, David, about how silence and that might be in Catholic theology, that would be considered more contemplation. I think meditation and contemplation are two different things, but mean different things in different theologies. But that discussion of that being a point of connection, that being a moment when you feel a part of things, that might be what some people would describe as a spiritual, onboarding or experience. So that's kind of cool. I thought about that before also within the context of that service. So are there other times where you feel like some of your strengths could be part of the fabric of your religious experience or your religious context, what you bring uniquely?
It's really hard to say, and part of that is that, like I said, I've personally, I almost want to use the word abandoned, although I'm not sure that's quite the word I want. The idea of participating in, organized religion, but I think one way that that any religion really can appeal to people on the spectrum is to have it not begin or end at the organized services, but to foster that connection to the rest of life. Again, as I mentioned earlier, how what resonated with me about Judaism was the moral code, because that was something that I could connect to life as a whole.
Great, thank you. So Ryan, I wanted to ask you, since you seem to have a very firm sense of your identity. You said you're something to the effect of solidly Presbyterian. I wonder if there are aspects of the service or of the tradition that you really not just enjoy, but really feel part of. Is there something that you feel makes you part of the fabric?
Well, I used to go to this young adults religious group a while back, and never really pursued it further due to one of your acquaintances leaving, either not showing up or basically vanished off the face of the earth type of thing. as for the rest of the Presbyterian spectrum, I felt, especially when I tried one of my other religious findings. Sometimes I feel rather awkward at times, but deep down I felt like I almost felt really belonged if once I get used to it and get used to the whatever doctrines they have and what procedures, that sort of thing. In case I want to write something that involves religion. I mean, sometimes these days you gotta come up with the straight up facts rather than what's in your head type of thing.
It sounds a lot like one of the ways that you discover what you think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is through the process of writing. Maybe that's an exercise for you that allows you to be more thoughtful or more contemplative.
More thoughtful, more contemplative sometimes in case I want to branch out to other religions, but due to this pandemic, that thing is going to a straight halt. That sort of thing.
A lot of people are experiencing that, and that's one of the nice things about having this kind of gathering, is that we're all experiencing that, and that's why we're all meeting online. I wonder if there are more opportunities for you to explore that online, explore any kind of religious or spiritual inclination.
Well, I don't want to be part of a Zoom conversation that I don't recognize, if that's what you're wondering. I mean, I can't just find a random Zoom link and then click it and entering it, and that would be completely awkward, thinking that it's just some random stranger that just pops in and say, hi, I'm studying religion just like you guys and want to be part of it. And it's like, who is this guy again?
So you think it's the awkwardness is really uncomfortable.
In a way.
I think maybe it's awkward for most of us. And that's just something where I've been a part of a lot of conversations about awkwardness, but sometimes you wonder if the awkwardness is worth something that you may get out of it, maybe not, but any kind of sense of shared experience or community. I want to talk a little bit about the flip side of what we've been discussing, which is, have you ever felt not a part of things? You know, I don't want to be negative, but I'm wondering if there's room for you to feel more at home, like you have a right to a place and belonging just as everyone else.
Well, that's a very good question. I don't usually be a part of the other non-Christian religions, mainly. I mean, at one point, I don't think I want to bring racism into this quasi-racism into this discussion. That's not what we're trying to discuss. But suffice to say, even though I seem different at a particular church I went to, deep down I feel just as welcome as everyone else.
That's really lovely. So you were aware of difference, but at the same time you also felt welcome. You felt a sense of being welcome and belonging.
Yeah, I was curious to see what this particular church has. Mainly, it's one of those black churches, and I've asked to see if I could participate, and she said, "Sure, you can participate, despite my color. It feels like it's some sort of a weird accidental symbolism, which we can, if we work together, we can bring the Lord's make the Lord's message stronger, that sort of thing.
Wow, that sounds like it was a powerful experience.
Yeah, powerful accidental experience, that sort of thing. My curiosity got the better of me that time, but deep down I felt like there's more to life than just a color of your skin type of thing.
Mm-hmm. And a religious opportunity or experience socially brought you to that awareness. That's very cool.
Mm.
How about you, David?
Mm.
Was there ever a moment where you were wondering if you were part of things or didn't feel such a part of things?
Um, yes and no, because I can remember cases of it going both ways. And that I think is something that I've noticed in a lot of religious communities is that sense of we're here if you just want someone to talk to. And that I think is something that if you can find that, and I'm sure not every religious community is like that, but I have encountered it. But even if it's just a few people you can find who you feel you can just have that conversation with, you know, uh, hang on, I'm sort of losing my train of thought here. Okay, so the question was times when I felt I wasn't part of things or part of the community.
Or
Is that
wondering if you were. Yeah, just idea of, yes.
well, there's one in particular I can think of, and it's it's one where that can so something I've noticed in a lot of religious communities, and it does exist in Judaism, or at least in Reform Judaism, is the idea of responsive prayers or responsive reading, or whatever term you want to use. Those, I think, were the times when I most questioned my connection, because it felt like I was being asked to say someone else's words. And I can't speak for everyone on this autism spectrum, but something that I have always found to be particularly grating is the idea of being expected to say something I don't mean. Even taking this out of the religious context for a moment, I'm sure a lot of you listening can remember times where either you or some other you as a child or some other child you knew at the time were told to apologize to someone, and you felt like you weren't in the wrong. And so, and of course, as a kid, you might not really see that the value of the apology isn't in whether you quote unquote mean it, it's more the repairing the relationship. But to get back to the main topic here, with responsive prayers, it's almost, sometimes it feels, because the words are written out for you, sometimes if you feel the connection to those words, that's great. But if you don't, it can feel like you're lying.
And do you think of any particular responsive prayer or response that felt like a lie to you?
I can't really think of specific examples just off the top of my head, because it happened so many times when I was younger.
Mhm. Do you think that there's, sorry, go ahead.
Although I actually, even as I was saying that, one came to mind, or a general example did. So during the Yom Kippur service, for those who don't know, Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement. There, the whole theme of the day is atoning for sins we've committed over the course of the year, and there is a lot of value in that. But uh, it, uh, but the responsive prayers in those services can strike a really wrong chord uh, for for me, because one, I might feel like I'm admitting to things I didn't do, and two, it it has a sense of shame to it that is usually not present in services I've been a part of.
Very interesting. I wonder if that's the intention, or if it resonates with you more strongly. And I guess I'm saying that because I wonder if that is something that can be brought to the attention of religious leadership, for how, not just how anybody with differences would experience a service, but it's, I assume, so I probably assume the reverse of what what somebody on the spectrum might assume. I assume that if one of you has an experience, that there must be somebody else who's listening who has that same experience. Whereas I would imagine it's very painful to feel like I'm the only person here who feels awkward, or I'm the only person here who feels like I'm saying words that don't really pertain to me or don't feel true for me. So I automatically, my response to that, or my thought about that is, what do we do about this? Who do we tell? Who do we engage in a conversation about how everyone can be made to feel more at home, to feel more included? Can you think of anything off the top of your head? I want to ask Ryan this, Ryan or John Ryan. Do you feel like there, and I see you're muted. I made this mistake of talking before when I was muted, and I said only important things during that moment. Ryan, can you unmute yourself for a moment, please?
Sure. I don't want to interrupt you.
No, oh, thank you. But what I'm wondering is if there is someone who you might talk to, who might make a service more meaningful or more inclusive. How do we do that? How do we approach that problem?
Is it my turn yet, or?
It could be your turn or David's turn. Who do we talk to about that?
Well, that's a very good question. I've not yet met someone that can help me with my religious stuff, and at least in the Houston area. When I was back at Mitchell College, I occasionally went to to morning services of church early in the morning type of thing, had private set sermons type of thing, and then went to a regular service somewhere else. Yeah, my mind is rather wandering, trying to find myself as a human being within regulations, trying to the all-loving hero trope type of thing, as well as that we should not judge people by their color rather than their acts. And yeah, basically trying to branch out my my knowledge of religion, and not just stuff you find on the internet, as well as things like that. People have to suffer to find these facts and post them straight on the internet.
Well, that is, of course, that's a problem of these times. We can't sit in a room just yet safely and, you know, and have these discussions without keyboards. But I'm wondering, I don't have the answer to it. I'm wondering aloud and inviting you to wonder aloud also. To whom do we address these difficulties if you feel like there's something that can be done to make yourself or someone else more comfortable? How to make a service more accessible? Because it's one of these things that I think it's easy to be blind to unless people bring it up, you know, and I think that's one of the things that can be addressed within leadership. But I don't know whether you're even aware if there was a time when you felt like you could feel more a part of things and instead you felt more separate. You have to be kind of aware. That presupposes, you know, a skill in being aware of that feeling.
That's a very good question. What I forgot to add in was that so far my only religious expert on the deal right now in this time of period is so far my dad.
Mm-hmm.
He's done his homework reading the Bible. I basically listen to the Bible, all the New Testament in 90 days, all the New Testament, but not quite all the Old Testament yet. It's one of those programs. Oh, let me finish. It's a certain program called the Bible in 90 days. You listen to hear what the Bible has to say. I mainly have the New Testament NIV type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then they have the Old Testament, which I listened to for a bit, and I don't know if I lost interest or or something, but suffice to say that many people don't touch upon the Old Testament like they do the New Testament for some reason. I mean, is the Old Testament dark and gritty, or?
I guess it depends on who you ask.
All I'm going to say on the subject is that might be a conversation for another time.
So Ryan is, I'm gathering that one thing that I hadn't thought about asking you is, sounds like religion is also one of the ways that you connect with your family, or you find, you know, communion, or you find something to talk about with your dad.
Yeah, they basically brought us together in more ways than the one. I don't see any of my family's members are constantly swearing. I mean, it's still like in either they're still stuck in that either 1930 mentality or 1950 or 1970, where people say "gosh," "darn," and "shoot" type of thing instead of those other words, which I can't exactly say here because this is quite a. I'm sure everyone here is a God-fearing person, and they can't exactly handle swear words, and there could be children present in the house.
It sounds like you have, just like David has a code. David gleans from the experience that there's a certain code that you learned, that it's a meaning that you've taken away from being Christian and being part of your family, both of those things. So it's a code that you've learned. That's a way that you feel on the inside or connected. So that's good.
Well, it's not just learned, it's more like drilled into my head.
Right, that's one kind of learning. You know, I don't know if either of you has any other comments on your respective views on religion, or spirituality from a firsthand experience. And that was what I was really interested in. That's why I invited you. I did want to say that both of you I find to be particularly thoughtful and experienced and interested in various aspects of religion, religious identity, meaning, purpose. I don't think we've talked as much about spirituality, which is an interesting distinction. But I think of it in terms of the different issues. I did want to circle back and say something because I think it is maybe meaningful in this context of talking about congregating and religious experience that, and I think I jumped on ahead past my own introduction, and my interest is in affinity, in building affinity among the neurodiverse, and just in general, what are different ways to build community around, loosely around really areas of affinity. And what has happened as part of this group experience that I started over 8 years ago is that people gravitated toward, and we do what the group consensually decides, they gravitated more toward arts and cultural events, no sporting events. So it was really interesting to see, and I'm really attaching meaning to it. I may be imposing my interpretation on it, but I think that there's a lot of latitude and a lot of inclusion that's just part and parcel of the arts and creativity. No one is really made to feel wrong, and it's because it's decided by group members themselves, the activities that we do, it's for them, by them, and it doesn't exclude them. So I'm interested in this topic of affinity, and when it comes to also community, and in the context of this conversation, religious community, what can be done to strengthen the feeling of being really not on the periphery, but actually an integral part of, in this instance, a religious community? What would it take for you to feel like it was really for you and about you?
Well, one thought I have on that is that, and I think this is probably true for most people, not just on the spectrum, but there needs to be a feeling that you're valued in the community, not just as like another tally on the count of members of the congregation, but that you are valued as an individual. And there are ways where I have seen that. My own congregation, even though, and I do consider it my congregation, even if I haven't been involved for a few years, does have specific things in place where the community is not just allowed, but welcomed to comment on how the synagogue does things and what can be changed. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
So in order,
obviously, no one's going to dictate. No one person is going to dictate what changes, and they shouldn't. But just to feel like your voice can be heard is valuable.
So in order for you to feel valued, you'd really have to feel heard or known and heard, right?
At the very least, I need to feel like if I have something to say, I can be heard.
And that certainly is hard for a lot of people to even raise their voice in the first place, especially when the expectation might be, as I know you've had some experience with other people on the spectrum, but that they might not be heard, and maybe it's too scary or fraught to make themselves heard.
Yeah. And also, I do want to sort of connect a little bit to something Dr. Messinio mentioned in her talk, which was some of the accommodations that can be made for the neurodiverse. And I think these can be applied to everyone, really. And one in particular that came to mind was I don't remember exactly how you worded it, Dr. Messinio, but the idea of having quiet spaces of a sort. And this is something, incidentally, that as of the last time I went to high holiday services at my congregation, they were actually doing that. We had one of our chapels set aside so that members of the congregation who so desired could just go in there for more of an unguided, silent meditation. And I felt that was valuable because I couldn't feel that. Because again, I couldn't really feel a connection being in this large crowd of people. Like I said, large congregation. But just being able to be alone, but still in a spiritual space, allowed for some measure of that connection to be there.
Thank you for letting us know that. And that's very much to your congregation's credit to preserve that space of silence, even, as you said, during a high holiday when you might expect the space to be at a premium and people to be packed and the sound to be reverberating from wall to wall. Thank you for letting us know that that practice is alive and well in your congregation. I appreciate that.
So, go ahead.
I did want to say I looked at the time, and I certainly am open to having any continuing conversation. I know there's going to be a question and answer, but I wanted to also say I'm very happy to answer any questions beyond this time and space. And I know I can make my details public, or I don't know if anybody has any specific question. If we go past that time, I'm happy to engage in conversation afterwards. And I wanted to thank both John Ryan and David for having their voices be heard, and also for listening, and for also allowing all of us to learn from you. So thank you. Is this the question period? I didn't know if I see they're in the chat box. Is there any kind of formal question and answer here? I see is it Juan Cooper or Joan Cooper? Thank you, Ryan and David. Your information was insightful. You have given some ideas for ministry for listening and silence. Very important. Does anybody have any questions at this point or comments? I guess we can use the chat box for that.
I'd just like to say, as we wait for other questions and comments to come in, thank you, John, Ryan, and David, for your insights as well. I really appreciated hearing your firsthand experiences of what was meaningful, and also what changes can be made, so that all voices and experiences are heard and valued. So thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure. You're welcome.
Likewise.
And Elaine also just included her response in the chat box. She also said that it was great, great workshop. Thank you. And so more dittos coming in as well. And Sean just added a comment that I'll read out to everybody, which connects with David's description of what is done in his congregation. He said, "My sense is that the Jewish community does good work to include the experiences of the neurodiverse in planning their services. You might look to the leadership of the Jewish Family Service here in Houston for more information about what congregations are doing."
I'm not sure if I heard correctly, but I think last hour someone asked a question about services for children, evaluative services. And although I'm a child psychologist, I work with adults, and so, but I am aware of the Texas Children's Hospital. The Autism Center there does a good job diagnostically, and then I do know private practitioners who do very good work. Happy to connect anyone with that question for specific referrals beyond, the diagnostic work.
And so if anybody else has any questions or comments for any of the presenters, we absolutely invite and welcome you to include them in the chat box. And Dr. Messinio just included a response as well. She said, "I think John Ryan mentioned that he had not yet found anyone other than his dad to help him with his religious search. Do you have any idea what qualities such a person would have, what questions they would ask you to be helpful, etc.?"
Well, that's a very good question. Basically, I've been raised to be a Presbyterian alongside the rest of my family, and let's see, how do I answer this? I think there are plenty of there basically is no right or wrong answer, but basically what doctrines you believe in, what you actually want to search your you could search your entire life and still find various clues to find out who you truly are and where you truly belong. It's just it's not just a visual flair or you like the backstory of certain saints and or you like the backstory of our Lord and Savior, period. And it's just it's basically where I am. It's basically where I am currently. I am tempted to seek out my pasture, but sometimes I sometimes play a neutral character. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong, sometimes it's wrongly right or rightly wrong type of thing. It's just it just feels like it literally blows my mind trying to find out who I truly belong, as well as trying to find some sort of a temporary form of worship other than the Presbyterian, which is at least a few miles away, which may require a taxi cab while I was at college in Connecticut. But here it's basically either First Pres or was gone to a church right down the street from First Pres, try to see what it's like, and feels a little bit awkward. So I decided to go back to First Pres because I simply found myself within the Houston area. That's all. Or is that the wrong answer that you were trying to ask?
Oh, thank you. That's helpful.
I'd ask Andrea.
Thank you.
So, do you want me to have something else on your mind, or does that answer your question?
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you all to our presenters and speakers. Yet again, at least for me personally, have found this to be a very wonderful and informative conference this afternoon. I've appreciated all the insights and information that's been provided. It's been excellent. So I'd like to turn it back over to my colleagues, Naveen and Sean, as I know we're nearing our closing time this afternoon.
I can start, and then and I might ask Naveen to help me with the logistical side of this. I really do want to thank everyone who has chosen to spend their afternoon with us, talking about the experience of the neurodiverse, and as a clinician, and as a person who's yeah. Spiritual, I guess I'll say. I think what's one of the things that I really take away with me today is actually what was said, but what isn't said, and how important silence is, and what escapes the easy ways that I have to talk about experience and a lot of the assumptions that I have about what spirituality is or should be. So I'm grateful for that, among many other gifts that I've received today. So thank you, everyone, for participating, and particularly Rachel and John Ryan and David. Thank you so much. We're really grateful for you being here today and for sharing so honestly about your experience, which I know is going to be really helpful for those of us who were listening. I know that you might have noticed in the chat box that there is at the very top of the chat box, Alyssa Davis from the Jung Center left her email address. If anybody needs the link to the evaluation form for today, you can email her directly. Naveen, are there other housekeeping things that we need to mention here as we close?
I don't think so. I will also be sending the recording to Alyssa, so it can be uploaded to the website. So if anybody missed today's presentation and would like to view it later, they will be able to access it that way.
That's wonderful. And Jennifer in the background here has pasted that email address down to the bottom of the top of the chat now, that, you know, so you can find it easily if you want to email Alyssa. We'll send out continuing education certificates, and we'll send, as Naveen said, we'll send the link so that if you'd like to forward it, please do. And with that, thank you all so much for being here today. And we look forward to the next installment, and maybe virtual again. We'll see, but hopefully live soon. So thank you all so much, and please be well.
Thank you all for joining us. Have a great afternoon. It was a pleasure to be with everyone.